Welcome to Wichita's Biz That Is on KGPT, and today we have an old friend of mine, Jerry Jones, who is the Vice President for Commercial Development for Slawson Companies. That's the proper title. And Jerry, I like to start and figure out how people got to where they are. So take me back to childhood, where you grew up and what was going on.
Sure. I was born in Nebraska, Hooker County, right in the middle of the state, and my parents were educators. My father was a football coach, so we moved around a little bit for a few years. Lived in Rushville, Nebraska, Hemingford, Nebraska, settled in Chadron, Nebraska, and where my dad was a football coach and then athletic director, principal, and we lived there till high school. And it was a great place to grow up. We had hills outside of town that we could run around in and play cowboys and Indians and whatnot. And so it was a fun way to grow up. Also grew up around sports and learned a lot about competition and teamwork from my father. So.
Hey, this sounds awfully familiar. My dad was a coach.
I remember that.
I grew up, started on a farm in Indiana, and
right.
Very similar.
Right. So small town roots, and I think that also has given me appreciation for community, because small communities have to stay strong and together to survive anymore. So that was the foundation. We moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. My dad took a job there, and I went to high school there, and 1 year of school at the University of Nebraska. So I'm a Husker fan still.
You admit it.
Even though I transferred to Kansas State, and I'm also a Wildcat, so I'm a little bit conflicted there.
Well, what got you interested in the direction you went work-wise?
I decided I wanted to be a landscape architect, so my interest was, again, back with communities and designing spaces, public spaces. And Nebraska didn't have a landscape architecture program. Luckily for me, Kansas State had one of the, and still does have, one of the best landscape architecture programs in the entire country. So I transferred there and stuck it out. It's very demanding degree and program, and graduated from there in 1983. And
had you started to win any football games by then?
At that point, no.
Okay, just checking.
So that's why that made it easier to stay a Husker fan with football. But I did discover college basketball, and part of that was through my wife, Lisa, who I met at K-State. So that was obviously another big milestone for Manhattan, Kansas.
Did you go on straight for your master's, or did you work for a while?
No, I worked for a while, and I followed Lisa. She was more focused on her future than I was at that point, so I followed her down to Arizona, where she went to grad school at the American Graduate School of International Management. And
That's a great program.
Great program, and it was great for her and her educational foundation. I was fortunate to get a job with the city of Scottsdale in our planning department, and worked there for 7 years. We lived in Scottsdale for 7 years. Both of our children were born there, and I started in the long-range planning, and then transitioned over to an urban designer position, and then ended up managing their downtown development program.
Now, did you go to grad school from there?
I did. One thing I learned while I was doing that is that I really enjoyed working with developers and the whole development process, and decided it would be a good time to go back to grad school and learn more about finance and real estate.
Then you went to some shabby school. What was the name of that again?
I applied to several, and somehow I got into Harvard. Yeah. And
I've heard of it.
That was another big milestone, and was accepted to their mid-career program at the Graduate School of Design. And so we spent 1 year in Cambridge, Massachusetts, took our kids, and it was a great year. I learned a lot, and was challenged as much as I've ever been challenged, and intellectually, and So that was all good, except that when I graduated, the country was still in a recession, and the real estate industry had probably been hurt or hit as hard as any. So scrambled a little bit for work. After that, we moved to Denver, where I was a planning consultant, and did a lot of work with some interesting clients and had some good projects there. But one day we got a call from Lisa's mom, who still lived in Manhattan, and said there's a great job open in Wichita, Kansas. It's a downtown development director, and we just thought Jerry might be interested in that, and I was.
And in spite of who was running place, you took the job.
So again, very fortunate for me that. Of course, we came out and interviewed with you and Marvin Wynn, who was the head of Wise Partnership for Growth back then, the Economic Development Organization, and Don Slawson, who was the chairman of the Downtown Development Committee. And it all worked out, and turned out to be a great move professionally and personally. Our kids were just starting into kindergarten, our oldest was, and so they grew up in Wichita, and working at the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development was challenging and a lot of fun. And
what are your takeaways from that? What do you remember?
Well, the big one, I'd have to say, was learning how to deal with or operate within the political environment. It was, as you know, it was a very political and demanding job, but it was also a very political time. And so I learned a lot there. I also learned a lot about business networking and personal interaction. Of course, we worked with dozens of committees and different organizations, and that's really, I think, how I learned that I loved Wichita.
Well, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with Jerry Jones on Wichita's Biz That Is.